You ready? Sit down, Mr. Shua. Akitiva! Avos, ubanim! Tavshinai Ches 2018! Yankala, he looked at his Rebbe was holding his report card. He said, "Give back, move! Mish, you failed! Mishnayis, you failed! Science, you failed. English, you failed. Math, you failed. Everything you failed. You even managed to fail recess. The first person in history. I'm sorry, Ankila. I'm so sorry. But there is no way we could graduate you from 5th grade and put you into 6th grade next year. You're going to have to do 5th grade one more time. I'm really sorry to tell you. Yankala looked at his Rebbe. He said, Rebbe, please. Everyone's going to 6th grade. They're graduating. They're going to middle school. I'm going to have to stay behind. I really don't want to do that. Let me go to 6th grade with everyone else. So he said, I'm sorry, Yankala. Look at this report card. You failed every single subject. Yankala said, I'm good at something. I'm good at it. I don't know. Math I'm good at. I'm excellent at math. The Rebbe said, Yankala, you're awful at math. You don't know anything about math. He said, I'm sure I'm terrific at it. He said, Yankala, tell me, what's, 12 times 8? Yankala looked at his
96.
He said, you ate 12 times? Today? How did you eat 12 times in one day? I can't even eat 3 times. Rebbe said, get out.
Wait, what was
4 divided by 1.
4.
Divided by 1 what? Just tell me 1 what and I'll answer you. No, 4 divided by 1. By 1 what? 4 what? 4 divided by 1. Rebbe, why are you getting angry at me? You ate 12 times today. You should be so happy. He said, Yankala, this is not going to work. But you know what? You think you're good at math? There's still 4 more weeks left to school. If in the 4 weeks from now, you're going to have a test. Sure, you want to have a seat right over here? Okay. Thank you so much. This test is going to be the final exam. And if you get 100, and I'm talking about 100, every single question right in this test, you can graduate with the rest of your class to 6th grade. Do we have a deal?
Yeah.
We have a deal. Give me a high five. We have a deal. Yankala walked out of the room. He said, I got to do math. He comes home. He says, Mommy, Daddy, Tati, can I have a math tutor? Takes out the math books. He starts studying. He spends a whole minute and a half that night studying. And he's like, oh, now I know math. I spent so much time. He realizes he needs more than a minute and a half. The next day he spends 5 minutes, 10 minutes. The next day after that he spends 20 minutes. He's getting really into it and he decides, he says to his mom and dad, there's no way that my class is going to graduate. There is no way in this world that my class is going to go from 5th grade to 6th grade and I'm going to stay behind. I cannot let that happen. And day in, day out he spent more time. He was spending a half an hour, 2 hours a night, 3 hours a night. He would come home from school and he would spend 4, 5, 6 hours studying his math examples. And he started getting good. He started getting better and better. He was taking practice tests at home and he was doing okay. He was getting some answers right. The night before the test came, little Yankala, he stayed up for hours and hours studying for this big test. He stayed up until the sun rose studying for this test. And then he fell asleep. And he wakes up. He looks at his watch. He says, "Get out! It's 10:30." And the test starts at 10 o'clock. He runs out of the house. He runs right back in and he puts on his pants. Then he runs out again. Runs to school. runs into his classroom and he gets there at 11 o'clock. And he says, teacher, can I take the test now? The teacher gives him the test. He says, Yankala, good luck. Because this was a 2-hour test and you're an hour late. There's no way you're going to finish it in time. Yankala says, let me have a shot. He takes the paper, he looks at the blackboard, and he sees the questions were written down. He starts writing the first question, writes it down on his paper, and he answers it like that, like that. The second question, the third question, the fourth question, the sixth, seventh. He's looking at his watch, looking at the questions, looking at his watch, looking at the question, ninth question, 10th question, looks at his watch. He managed to finish 10 questions in a half-hour flat. He's like, this is a piece of cake. He looks at the board, sees one last question in the top corner there, and he's got a half hour left. He writes down the 11th question on his paper.
Takes a nap.
But it's not easy this one. 5 minutes go by, 10 minutes, he's scribbling on his paper, scribbling on the back of the paper, 20 minutes. And the teacher says, Kinderlach, 10 minutes left and the test is finished. And Yankala remembers what his Rebbe said. He's got to get 100%, all the answers correct for him to graduate. He's starting to sweat. He looks at his watch. Teacher says, 5 minutes left. He's scribbling. He takes another piece of paper, scribbling. He can't figure it out. The teacher says, Kinderlach, put down your pencils.
What was the last question?
The test is over. Please hand in your papers. Yankel looks at his teacher. He says, please, let me just have 5 more minutes. He says, I'm sorry, the test is over. 5 more minutes. Yankel, you want 5 more minutes? Take 5 more minutes. He sits there for another minute, 2, 3, 4. He says, just another 5 minutes. Another 5 minutes. 10 minutes go by. 20 minutes go by. An hour later, the teacher says, I'm sorry. This is not happening. And Yankel, with tears at his eyes, he looks at the teacher and he says, you know what? I'm not going to graduate this year, but let me at least take this test home with me. This is not about me and the test anymore. This is about me and me. I want to see if I can pass this test. I want to see if I can get 100%. Teacher says, you want to take it home? Go ahead, take it home. And he spends that night, hours and hours, just trying to get that last question. He spends the next day and the day after that. And the summer comes, all his friends graduate and Yankel doesn't. He goes to camp that summer. And day after day in camp, he spends hours and hours on that 11th question. He's got to get it right. He's got to figure it out.
What was the question?
The summer goes by.
What was the question?
I'll tell you afterwards, deal. And if you get it right, you will graduate too. And the next year school starts. And all his friends are in the 6th grade. He's repeating 5th grade. Rosh Hashanah comes. Yom Kippur comes. Sukkot comes. He's spending hours and hours, days and days. Hanukkah comes. It's 3 weeks after Hanukkah. And after spending weeks and weeks, months and months, 6 months finally, after the test, he comes into school and he's like, teacher, I did it. Teacher looks at him, he's like, oh, you finished 11 questions. After 6 months. Well done, Yankova. He's like, could you at least just grade it? Just tell me what I got. He says, you know what, I'll even grade it for you right now. Give me the test. Goes into the teacher's office. He sits down. Starts checking off the first one, second one, third one. Yankala goes back to class. Suddenly there's a knock on the door in the class. It's not his teacher, it's not his Rebbe, it's the principal of the school. He says, you, Yankala, come with me now. Yankala's very scared. He starts walking with his principal down a long corridor, up to the 3rd floor, to the principal's office. Big office, never been there. He comes there, and his parents are there. His uncles are there. His cousin, his first cousin once removed is there. All the teachers, the board of directors, all sitting in this room jammed in. Yankala is so nervous. And there's his teacher in the front, holding the test up. How did you do it? How did you do it? He looks Yankel straight in the eye, and Yankel's getting really, really nervous. He says, I did it. I didn't cheat. I did it all myself. How did you do it, Yankele? Did I get them right? He says, you all got all 10 questions of the test right. 10 questions. I got all 11 questions. Didn't I get them? Yankele, this test was a test of 10 questions. And you got all 10 questions right, but you must have came late. Because before the test started, on the corner of the board, I wrote a math question that was around for hundreds of years. It was an impossible question. No one's ever figured it out. Einstein and Newton themselves, some of the greatest minds in the world, gave a crack at that question. I put the question on the board. The kid Dilach should see it and see what an impossible question looks like. Yankele, I ask you one more time. It was impossible. How did you do it? And with the innocence of a 10-year-old, Yankele looked at his teacher, he looked at the principal, he looked at everyone in the room, and he said, I didn't know it was impossible. I didn't know it was impossible. Kinderlach, we are B'nai Avraham. Kinderlach, we are B'nai Yitzchak. Kinderlach, we are B'nai Yaakov. We're B'nai Yisrael. We're YEHUDI. We are Kollel Yisrael. Let no one ever tell us that anything is impossible. Akitavach. Thank you for coming. Thank you for listening. My name is Stilerman. This is avos ubanim. Tov Shnai 2018.